Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Shackelford with the SANS Institute, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today. I'm also joined by Craig Harbour, the Chief Technology Officer for Fidelis Cybersecurity Solutions. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we've been engaged actually in really looking at new opportunities and new ways for cybersecurity professionals to start thinking about not only getting in front of some of the attacks that are happening out there today, but also looking at some of the tools and different methods that they can take advantage of, as well as frameworks that have been developed in the industry to help us actually improve our detection and all of our just general security operations overall. So again, very exciting times. So Craig, as we've been talking about in some of these other discussions and sessions we've been having, one of the things that you've noted several times is just the reactive nature of our defenses and how we've had to react for so long and how we're trying to sort of get in front of things. We're trying to be a bit more proactive. Can you expand on that notion of just being more proactive, trying to get in front of attacks and sort of, basically out fighting these guys and really doing a better job up front?
Sure. I think there's probably two things we want to talk about: automation and integration of existing tool suites, and then I think we got to pick up a little bit on machine learning and how we can leverage that. So let's start with the automation integration.
Right.
So I think one of the key things, and I tie this as well to stack consolidation. I think as agencies and organizations are really looking at how they can improve their overall defensive posture, one of the first things to do is let's look at the stacks that we have and how do we make sure that they're fully being leveraged, right? We made huge investments. And so one of the things, I'll just bring it back to the framework. I think the framework allows us to use as a way to assess capabilities that we have, right? And from that, we can start doing what-if analysis and doing stack reduction, saying we have overlaps and where do we have gaps in capabilities. That only starts to get us down to a common set of tools, but that still doesn't make us any better, in my opinion, until they're better integrated and automated, right? And what I mean by that is really starting to understand our own defensive workflows.
Right.
If we understand the attack sequences, right, and think about the frameworks and think about our understanding of the techniques and the attacker sequencing of those techniques, we should be able to also start to put in places, I'll say playbooks, cyber playbooks, from a defensive standpoint that starts to detect, hey, we're starting to detect these techniques in sequence, which is probably an indication of a particular APT. So given that understanding, so what do we do, right? So rather than reacting, we're actually automating things as we start to see them happening. Now, part of that really brings in also the machine learning aspect, right? An analytic that runs on top of this is that it's one thing, and I think if, people are familiar now with the attack framework and the dashboard that it has, but just because techniques are lighting up, that's just, they're just individual techniques. It's the machine learning that's going to sit on top of that really starts to help us understand, hey, this is actually an attack underway, right? And so I think machine learning does two things for us. It helps us with sense making, because I think this is where humans don't do a good job, right? Lots of data, we get overwhelmed very quickly, and I think machine learning is going to allow us to really understand, detect attackers, or at least identify, I'll say, anomalous activity, and at least start to point the offense or the defenders to, okay, this is where you should focus your efforts in on. I think the other aspect of machine learning that we need to take advantage of is a lot of people talk about it for detections. And detections is one aspect, but it's also the response, which I don't know that we talk enough about when we talk about automation. It's not only about detecting things, but now given an understanding of something's happening, what do I tell the defender to do? What are the courses of action that they could take?
Right.
What is something that they could do is less risky versus more risky? And then it ties into kind of the operational tempo of what's the right approach, right? If you were in a DoD defensive wartime scenario, you may take a very aggressive action versus if this is a banking or pharmaceutical, maybe you take a less aggressive action. I think I think the industry vertical, the operational tempo scenario is going to influence that, but it's going to really require machine learning to help us better understand what's happening, better tee up response actions, and to the extent that we can automate, I think the reality is, and I think you know this extremely well, right? It's hard to find cyber-skilled resources out there, right?
This is true.
And so automation is going to be a way to raise the bar of the skilled people that we have, because those skilled analysts can actually write the playbooks that essentially become training material for those junior analysts that are out there. And ultimately, it frees up analytic cycles, right? So that we can use that freed up time to better understand and dig into and look for the unknown, right? Because the frameworks that we've been talking about, they really capture known activity. So where's the effort to look for that next technique or that next sequencing of technique? And I think that's, again, where automation kind of indirectly, by freeing up resources, really gives us an opportunity to leverage that as a way going forward.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And in fact, one of the things I've heard mentioned with regard to machine learning is it affords a sort of a feedback loop that continuously updates, right? So, talking about behaviors and talking about these attack frameworks, well, they're not static.
Right.
So they're changing. How can we keep up with that? Because I don't think we've done a very good job of that over the years.
No, and I agree with you. And, I think if I recall back even to the presentation that you did in this topical area, I mean, what's amazing to me is the amount of manual processes we perform today in any type of SOC or NOC environment, and the utilization of automation tools to essentially, take things that were taking hours and hours to do on an analyst's time, and we can actually turn that around in minutes, in seconds now. So it's a huge improvement to use automation, to use machine learning as we're going forward.